So let's be honest. Training camp is not for the faint of heart, especially if you're a player on the bubble. When you're starting training camp, your idea is I'm going to make this roster, I'm going to be the best I can be, and no one's going to stop me. But the facts of the facts is with the NFL draft, free agency, and undrafted free agents, that doesn't always end up being the case. Here are three players that could get cut during training camp for the Cincinnati Bengals. Number three, Terrell Basham. We talked about how the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason signed him to a 1-year league minimum deal. There's nothing guarantees for his contract, so they could just release him and it would not hurt them at all. Now, of course, having as many pass rushers as possible is always a great thing. He is 29 years old going into this year, and as you can see from his stats, he never really blossomed into a true monster / great pass rusher. So it's not like Cincinnati here is holding on to much. Now, of course, at this moment in time, he is a rotational piece with the rookie Myles Murphy and, of course, Joseph Asai. If he does struggle, let's say even a little bit during training camp, and any of the other undrafted players the Bengals picked up, or drafted players, actually, we did not draft any defensive ends, but undrafted players, it's very possible, especially with his price tag of a 1-year league minimum deal, he will be cut before training camp ends. He'll be cut before preseason starts. Now, of course, if he does survive training camp, it's very possible he could also get cut in preseason. Depending on how well he does, it's probably going to take a lot for him to make the 53-man roster. Especially because undrafted free agents every single year very much surprise you, and some of them are hidden gems. So, don't be surprised if Terrell Basham is not on the roster when the season starts. Number 2, Stanley Morgan. Stanley Morgan has been on this team since 2019. And obviously, with them drafting 2 new wide receivers, in Andre and, of course, in Charlie Jones, the roster is starting to go down, right? And it's very possible we see, Stanley Morgan kind of get that boot. As the depth chart starts finalizing, we already know it's going to be Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Charlie Jones, and then that spot right there could be Andre, could be Stanley Morgan, could be more a list of other players. So Stanley Morgan could be cut if he does fall behind in training camp. Again, like I said, this bubble players where really they don't have much to go off of other than, hoping that maybe they give someone to special teams or they do show enough to make this team. It's not easy to make the team when it comes to training camp. So don't be surprised if Stanley Morgan ends up getting the boot. The number 1 player, Sidney Jones. Now, the Bengals picked up Sidney Jones from free agency, giving him a league minimum deal. Now, they picked him up before they drafted DJ Turner in the second round of the NFL draft. Now, depending on how the other cornerbacks they picked up in free and undrafted cornerbacks slash other players on their roster, it's very possible Sidney Jones does not make the final cut. Right now, it goes Cheeto, Cam Taylor-Britt, Mike Hilton, DJ Turner, and then Sidney Jones. But again, like I said, it's very possible they go for another undrafted player who's on free agency right now. It's also possible, I just want to cut in here real fast, it's also possible for them to go to DJ or Jalen Davis. Just absolutely has an amazing training camp and they really show off and are absolute gems, and they end up going with someone like that. Or again, Alan George. The list goes on and on. Now, the only player, I don't think there's any of these players. Maybe Alan George, I would say, who was in, no, he's a 1 year guy. So, no, yeah, none of these guys are undrafted at this moment in time for the Bengals. Obviously, he was undrafted, but I'm saying, like, for this year. And of course, it could also go with Tell the third. So there's a lot of players on this cornerback spot that they could go with. And again, as I said in the rest of this video, they could also go with their free agency, or of course when players get cut. So enjoy the rest of the video. And he just ends up taking a spot of Sidney Jones. Or maybe they do target a veteran in free agency, especially as we get closer to preseason. Got to keep in mind that cuts start happening, right? So teams have to cut down to certain numbers. When they cut down to certain numbers, veterans and other players get released into free agency. So there might be a veteran right now that the Bengals, at this moment in time, isn't looking at because they're still on the team, but they get cut once preseason does start. Or it could be actual, not veterans, but younger guys who might, not be the greatest, but the Bengals see as an opportunity to take them, bring them into loose defense, and absolutely soar with them in loose defense. It's very possible that ends up happening. And again, as I said this whole entire video, undrafted players always get the look, because again, you never know what the potential could be. So these are 3 players, like I said before, that could get cut. It's very possible all 3 make the active roster, but it's also possible they get the cut or the boot. See you guys next one. Peace out.